Part 33. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 321. They were angry, painful, hateful, and extremely resentful. In their opinion, the current decline of Chang'an City was all caused by the tyrant. If it weren't for the tyrant, how could there be today's disaster? If it weren't for the tyrant, how could there be so many things? And the tyrant actually fled directly for fear of crime, abandoning them and Chang'an City. What made them even more unbearable was that before the tyrant left, he took away all the beautiful ladies in Chang'an City. If this is not fleeing, what is this? They were like a pile of broken garbage, ruthlessly abandoned in the city. Thinking of this, many people gnashed their teeth and their eyes were red. At this moment, they finally understood why His Majesty took so many women with him when he left, and did not bring any soldiers. It turned out that he did not think about resisting the enemy at all, but fled. This damn tyrant, even when he fled, he did not forget women, and did not forget to indulge in beauty. Damn the tyrant! He is the one who deserves to die the most. It is a misfortune for the Qin dynasty to have such a tyrant. Everyone roared to the sky, no longer suppressing their indignation, and cursed with all kinds of unbearable curses. They had wanted to curse for a long time, but they didn't dare to, because they were afraid of death. But now it's different. In this situation, even if all the saints of the emperor were revived, it wouldn't have much effect. They are facing hundreds of saints, and there may even be imperial weapons. It is estimated that even if the emperor saints are revived, they will definitely flee here at the first time instead of choosing to fight. After all, why fight to the death when you know you will lose? So since you are going to die anyway, why not curse the tyrant a few more times before you die? And the tyrant is not here at this time, maybe he is enjoying himself in a beautiful corner. Even if they curse him fiercely, he can't hear it, so why not curse a few more times to satisfy your desire? At this moment, Qin Mu's reputation as a tyrant was completely established. The people in Chang'an City, including the ministers in the court, all cursed Qin Mu. They seemed to have found an outlet to vent their anger and cursed him wantonly. For a time, Chang'an City was in chaos, and the sound of cursing continued. On the city wall, some guards loyal to Qin Mu listened to these dirty words and gnashed their teeth. But they could not refute it, because they knew very well that this was an irrefutable fact. There is still no news about the so-called imperial expedition of His Majesty, and even the enemy has reached the doorstep, but His Majesty's figure is still unknown. All these signs show that His Majesty has abandoned Chang'an City and the Qin dynasty. If this is not a tyrant, then what is a tyrant? Your Majesty. The guards looked at each other and could see the sadness and bitterness in each other's eyes. They were all soldiers who had participated in the conquest of the Xuanhuan dynasty. They followed His Majesty to suppress Xuanhuan and had made great achievements in the war. They had never suffered such humiliation. But now, many guards showed a look of dejection on their faces and stood there in despair. The atmosphere of endless panic and despair enveloped everyone's heart. In Chang'an City, countless people shed tears in pain, knelt on the ground, and begged the saints to let them go. However, all this was to no avail. In front of many saints, all struggle seemed so pale and powerless. Boom! Nangongyun stepped into the air, and every step he took would have a terrifying force burst out, accompanied by a dull collision sound. The walls of Chang'an City collapsed with a loud bang, smoke and dust filled the air, and rubble splashed everywhere. Pieces of broken bricks and tiles fell on countless people, smashing them all over and bleeding. It's really hopeless. Is the Qin dynasty destined to perish? No. I haven't lived enough. I don't want to die. Woo woo woo. Under the city wall, many imperial guards saw the scene and were extremely angry. They knew that Chang'an City could no longer be defended. The saint was too strong. So strong that it was suffocating. Ants are just ants after all. No matter how hard they struggle, the final result is the same. Nangongyuan glanced at Chang'an City indifferently, then retracted his gaze and turned to the saints standing in the void. The saints are majestic and awe-inspiring. This battle should end. Nangongyuan said indifferently. His figure flashed, and he instantly passed through layers of barriers and descended on Chang'an City, looking down at the panicked people and practitioners from a high position. He looked down at these ants, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. Give up. The indifferent words sounded, like the cold ice of the netherworld, making people's hearts palpitate. I'll give you 3 seconds to think about it. Nangongyun's voice was calm and indifferent. At that moment, countless people in Chang'an City trembled all over, their legs trembled, and their faces were full of despair and fear. Although they didn't know who Nangongyun was. But just based on the momentum just now, it was enough for them to understand that the person who came was unfathomable and was definitely a real saint. Nangongyun put his hands behind his back and looked at the people below proudly, his voice vast and distant. Either surrender or die. The voice fell. An extremely terrifying aura burst out from Nangongyun, sweeping across the 8 wastelands, vast and majestic, shaking the void. The entire sky seemed to become dark, dark clouds covered the sun, and thunder intertwined into a net. At this moment, all the people in Chang'an City felt as if they were in the sea of thunder above the 9 heavens, enduring the attack of destroying the world. Bang bang bang. In an instant, countless people knelt directly on the ground, trembling. Even though many practitioners also knelt on the ground, they still couldn't resist the suppression of the magnificent aura. The whole person knelt on the ground, trembling, and didn't even have the courage to raise his head. This is an absolute gap. I surrender. I am willing to surrender. I am willing to surrender too. Saint, spare my life. Saint, spare my life. Waves of wailing came from those cultivators and ordinary people, and everyone kept bowing their heads. In the face of absolute strength, any resistance seems so powerless. Humph. Trash. Looking at the Qin people who kept kowtowing, Nangongyun raised his eyebrows and smiled contemptuously. Then he turned to look at the saints and said with a smile, "We have already won this battle. Next, it is time to sweep Chang'an City. Fellow Taoists, take action." He thought that there would be some resistance in Chang'an City, and maybe some saints would take action, but now it seems that he was just overthinking. In front of so many saints, even if there is a saint of Qin sitting in Chang'an City, he probably wouldn't dare to show up at this moment, but think about how to escape from here? Ha ha ha, wonderful, wonderful. Brother Nangong, since you say so, then I'd rather obey your order. Ha ha ha. I'll go first. I'll go. Loud voices rang out one after another. Then many saints' Dharma images rose into the sky together. They stepped on the void, flew down quickly, and rushed towards Chang'an City. Thousands of golden lotuses blossomed, turning into millions of rays of light that fell down and sprinkled on these saints. In an instant, the power of many saints' Dharma images surged, and their speed suddenly increased by nearly times. Almost in an instant, they crossed dozens of miles of void and appeared above Chang'an City. Endless auspiciousness bloomed, and the saints' divine light burst out, pressing down on the city of Chang'an. At this moment, everything was silent, and it seemed that only the bright light emitted by these saints' Dharma images was left in the world. It's over. Looking at the saints' Dharma images falling towards Chang'an City, all the people felt that they had fallen into the abyss and had no idea of resistance at all. Ha 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 ha. At this critical moment, a loud and powerful laugh suddenly exploded from the city wall. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 322. On the top of the city tower, a figure slowly stood up and laughed heartily, as if drinking wine and eating meat. He has a kind face and white beard and hair, just like a villager and farmer in the mortal world, but at this moment, he exudes an aura of infinite domineering power, as if he can suppress the world and all enemies. The person who burst out laughing was none other than National Master Du Yulin. I saw him standing up and looking up at the sky. The dejection and despair before were completely gone from his expression. Instead, he was replaced by high morale, excitement, and a strong fighting spirit. Just a few rubbish, trying to destroy Chang'an City? Ridiculous, extremely ridiculous. A sarcastic arc appeared on his face. When those words came out, the people in the entire Chang'an City were stunned and sluggish. What is going on? The saint has arrived and the situation has been decided. The Imperial Master can still laugh out loud? Could it be that the Imperial Master has been frightened out of his wits? For a time, both the practitioners and the people of Chang'an City were stunned. National Preceptor, what do you want to do? National Master, don't do anything stupid. National Master, you must not act recklessly. National Master, Great Qin is not worth your life. When the people in Chang'an City reacted, they couldn't help but exclaimed and offered words of persuasion. They knew how the Imperial Master felt about the Qin and the city of Chang'an, but now was not the time to act impulsively, otherwise they would have sacrificed their lives in vain. After all, he was a saint. He is a noble saint. Whether it is the spiritual world, the secular world, or even the alien world, the saint is always high above all living beings, possessing the unrivaled power to overturn rivers, move mountains and seas, and destroy everything. Not to mention, there are other saints present. No matter how strong the National Master is, he is determined not to be able to match the terrifying power of the saints combined. Therefore, after hearing Du Yulin's shouting, many people in Chang'an City couldn't help shouting and admonishing. In their opinion, the National Master is crazy. Regardless of his own life, he chose to go head-to-head with many saints. Ha 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 ha. Imperial Master Du Yulin looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. He ignored these people in Chang'an City. Instead, he looked at the Dharma image of the saint, with eyes as bright as stars. At this time, the saints also looked at Du Yulin with scrutiny and inquiry. It turns out he is the Grand Master of the Qin dynasty. I have heard the name of the Grand Master for a long time. When I saw him today, it was indeed something extraordinary. Du Yulin, if you are willing to submit to us and work for us, I will give you glory and wealth after we conquer Chang'an. Someone spoke with a hint of appreciation, but there was a kind of charity in the words. Submit? Ha 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 ha. Are you worthy? Du Yulin laughed wildly. His eyes were wide open, with extremely hot fire burning in his pupils. I am your Majesty's personally appointed Grand Master of the Qin dynasty, and I am stationed in Chang'an City on your Majesty's orders. I live in a temple and enjoy the salary of a minister. I benefit the people, I seek welfare for the people, and I fight for the Qin dynasty. How can you, mere saints, be so virtuous as to make me surrender? His words were sonorous and powerful, and his voice was like rolling thunder, resounding throughout Chang'an City and resounding in everyone's heart. What qualifications do you have to make me, Du Yulin, surrender to me? Boom. Du Yulin's voice was like the earth shattering, shaking the world, shaking people's hearts, and shocking everyone. He stood on top of the city, his eyes looking in all directions with deep disdain. Presumptuous. You're looking for death. A mere ant wants to be on an equal footing with us. Those saints suddenly became furious, and their eyes were cold and gleaming. Du Yulin's attitude made them extremely angry. Who are they? He is a noble saint. All of them are existences that transcend ordinary gods. They are aloof and control the lives of all living beings. They look down upon the common people, as if they were banished to immortals from the 9 heavens, superior to all living beings. Even the emperor was nothing more than an insignificant ant in their eyes. But for such a person, there is an ant who actually despises them, not only rejects their invitation, but even dares to laugh at them. How can they endure this? Although a group of saints and Dharma ministers have their own evil intentions, they are also angry at this moment. I don't know how to praise. A saint and Dharma minister snorted coldly. As he shouted, the void trembled, and an invisible force burst out in an instant. Click. The next moment, a gap opened in the void. A dark, mysterious giant claw suddenly stretched out from the crack and grabbed Du Yulin, who was hanging on the top of Chang'an City, in his hand. This scene made everyone present feel excited. But the next second, Du Yulin strangely broke free from the giant claw. Seeing this scene, the saint frowned slightly, obviously not expecting that his attack was not effective. At this moment, the void around Du Yulin suddenly twisted. The next moment, jet-black light pillars gathered from all directions. How can we allow you to trample on the land of our great Qin dynasty? Today is the day you die. Du Yulin roared with joy, then suddenly leaped up and rushed towards the golden lotus and infinite holy light. Humph! How dare a half-saint try to stop a chariot? You're looking for death. Nangongyun's eyes condensed, and a sneer appeared on his face. Just an ant, dare to resist. Many other saints sneered and looked down on him. Although they had never fought Du Yulin in person, they could still easily see through his strength with their realm. Du Yulin was indeed very strong. But he was still too weak for them. Any one of them could crush him countless times. Moreover, now that they were all together, how could he possibly fight against them? Du Yulin, you are too stupid. Do you really think that you can stop us by yourself? Wishful thinking. Since you are stubborn, I will help you. The saints spoke indifferently, their voices were cold and ruthless, and then they took a step forward, and in an instant, the overwhelming power bloomed. They were too lazy to take action, they just looked at each other, and the next moment they pointed. The holy light in the sky turned into a dazzling sword, across the sky, and fell towards Du Yulin. It's over. The people in Chang'an were terrified. Everyone's face was full of sorrow. No matter how strong the national teacher is, how can he stop these saints? This time, I'm afraid even the national teacher will fall. National teacher. In Chang'an, some people spoke in grief. But then, the expressions on everyone's faces froze instantly. The long sword transformed by the holy light suddenly disappeared when it touched Du Yulin's body. Then, what if I am added? A clear young man's voice suddenly resounded through the sky, exploding over Chang'an City like a morning bell and an evening drum, with a hint of playfulness. Boom! In an instant, an endless and extremely huge imperial power spread all over the sky, almost oppressing and shattering one's soul. In an instant, divine light burst out, endless gusts of wind overturned the clouds, the sky shook, and the sun and the moon lost their light. What is it? Is this imperial power? Feeling this pressure, the expressions of those saints changed, and they suddenly turned around and looked outside Chang'an City. They looked horrified, their hearts pounding, as if they had sensed some terrible crisis. Boom! The next moment, under the horrified eyes of everyone, a magnificent dragon sedan slowly drove into Chang'an City. The sedan was golden and luxurious, with countless auspicious beasts carved on it, lifelike, as if alive, full of infinite charm. What was even more exaggerated was that in front of the sedan, there were 9 5-clawed golden dragons pulling the sedan, roaring with dragons, with divine power as vast as if they were about to tear the sky apart. The majestic aura filled the entire world, almost drowning everything. And at the top of the sedan, there stood a figure. It was a young man wearing a purple gold dragon robe. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mi and Bulletin Leng. Chapter 323. On the dragon chariot, there stood a figure. He wore a 9-dragon crown, a purple gold dragon robe, a white jade dragon belt around his waist, and bright yellow shoes. On the golden dragon robe were 9 real dragon patterns, each of which contained mysterious runes, and a brilliant light flowed all over his body, as if a god had come to earth, with unpredictable majesty. He was tall and slender, with his hands behind his back, his clothes fluttering, his long hair draped over his shoulders, his eyes as deep as the sea, with thousands of stars rising and falling, containing infinite mysteries, and the whole person seemed to be integrated with the world, exuding a supreme majesty. At this moment, the whole city of Chang'an was silent. All was silent, and a pin drop could be heard. Whether it was the common people, the practitioners, or the saints of the major holy lands and sects, they were all stunned. They stared blankly at the young man on the top of the dragon chariot. The young man walked with his hands behind his back, his sleeves fluttering, revealing an extraordinary temperament from head to toe, a natural king. At this moment, his body was upright, as if he had broken through the sky, looking down on the heavens. He was like a god descending from the sky, carrying millions of thunders, descending into the mortal world. This is. The people in Chang'an city were stunned, they stared with wide eyes, looking at the tall body in disbelief. And the next moment. Your Majesty. You are back. It's Your Majesty. Your Majesty is back. On the city wall, some soldiers shouted excitedly, tears streaming down their faces. Countless generals stared with wide eyes, trembling with excitement. That was their emperor, their king. It was the most noble belief in their hearts. All the soldiers in Chang'an city were boiling, and they knelt on the ground and kowtowed. The people in Chang'an city were all staring blankly at the figure of the young man on the top of the dragon chariot. Even though they had not been qualified to see Qin Mu before and did not know what their majesty looked like, they all woke up when they heard the soldiers call. That young man was their emperor. He is His Majesty. Some people murmured, their hearts were shaken. They never dreamed that when they fell into despair, had no hope, and began to curse their own majesty as a tyrant, they actually saw their own majesty. It was like a dream, completely unexpected. It's Your Majesty. It's our Majesty who is back. Soon. On the city wall, countless soldiers roared wildly, and the sound resounded through the sky. Countless people in Chang'an city were ecstatic. Especially women, they were so excited that tears filled their eyes. This is not a dream. This is real. They were not abandoned, and Chang'an city was not abandoned. His Majesty is really back. Meet the Emperor. Meet Your Majesty. In the entire Chang'an city, all the defenders and all the people shouted loudly, and loud roars rang out, resounding through the sky and shocking the 4 fields. No matter whether they were men, women, old or young, they all knelt on the ground, tears welling in their eyes, and bowed their heads to the young man on the top of the dragon chariot, with extreme respect. No matter whether they had hated Qin Mu to the bone, or insulted him, at this moment they all knelt on the ground with great piety, chanting the title of Long Live, and their expressions were respectful. Your Majesty was able to arrive at the most critical moment of Chang'an city, which can explain everything. Who dares to show up in a swagger under the joint siege of hundreds of saints? No creature in the entire human race, even in the alien race, dares to do this. And their Majesty dares. This is the real emperor, the emperor who deserves their lifelong loyalty. What if he was a foolish tyrant? Just the fact that he dared to fight against the majority and face hundreds of saints alone was enough to make everyone surrender. Ministers, Welcome our emperor back to the court. Generals knelt on the ground one by one, and their excited voices almost tore the sky apart. At this moment, everything in the world was dim, and only the majestic figure on the dragon chariot was the protagonist. Is it him? Xuanhuan's pretty face changed slightly, and her beautiful eyes flickered. She had thought that Qin Mu would appear, but she never thought that Qin Mu would return to Chang'an City in this way. Nangongyun's also looked at Qin Mu with doubts, his eyes full of astonishment. The saints of the Apocalypse domain and the Wind Spirit domain also suddenly contracted their pupils, and their eyes were filled with infinite coldness. Qin Mu. He is back. And the pressure he exuded seemed to be the power of the emperor, which made them want to kneel down and kowtow. If they hadn't carried the imperial weapons, which invisibly offset the imperial power, I'm afraid some of them would have made a fool of themselves by now, and there would be no need to fight this battle. The opponent's imperial power alone would have suppressed them to death. This is the imperial power, a power that only a true emperor can possess. Compared with the emperor, the saint is like a mortal compared with an immortal god, which is simply vulnerable and cannot be resisted at all. How old is he? Logically speaking, he shouldn't have such power. Is it because he has broken through to the realm of the emperor? No, it's impossible. This is absolutely impossible. As soon as this idea appeared in the minds of the saints, it was quickly strangled in the cradle. They were unwilling to admit that this idea was too absurd. How could the head of a mere dynasty in a borderland become a great emperor? It must have been with the help of some weapons or magic weapons. The saints looked at each other, thoughts flashed through their minds like lightning, and they figured out the whole story in an instant. That must be the case. Beyond that, there's no explanation at all. But how could the leader of a dynasty in a borderland have emperor-level weapons and magic weapons? The saints were puzzled. Have they not heard that there are such imperial soldiers in the great Qin dynasty? However, no matter how puzzled they are, they still can't change the facts. That majestic and vast pressure, as powerful as an abyss or a prison, is emanating from the young man sitting on the dragon banner. Even they felt suppressed by this coercion, and they couldn't even raise their hearts to resist. There must be some secret in him. Yes, he must have some special magic weapon to protect his body. Otherwise, how could he have the power of an emperor? Yes, he is probably just showing off, trying to scare us away. Ridiculous. This group of saints communicated with each other, discussed one another, and had made up their minds. I'm back. The dragon chases the top. Qin Mu's eyes were dull and his voice was low, full of magnetism. Speak concisely. But it contains indescribable power. He stood casually on top of Long Chu, overlooking all living beings, completely integrated with the heavens, and his momentum was magnificent, like an abyss or a prison. It's so daunting that you can't help but feel the urge to kneel down. Behind him, several beautiful figures that looked like goddesses from the 9 heavens stood quietly, like stars over the moon, making Qin Mu even more dazzling. What crime do you deserve for offending great Qin? Qin Mu's expression was indifferent, and his pair of deep and boundless eyes looked at the saints indifferently. There was no cultivation in his voice, but it was like rolling thunder, shaking the entire city of Chang'an. At this moment, it seemed that only these words were left in the world. Snort. An apocalypse saint snorted coldly, pretentious. Boom. The words just fell. He raised his hand and grabbed the dragon, hoping to capture Qin Mu. Although he didn't know what kind of secret Qin Mu had. But he believed that Qin Mu must have used some special means. Otherwise, how could he become so powerful in such a short period of time? Therefore, he decided to take down Qin Mu first to avoid long nights and dreams. Buzz. However, when his palm reached out and had not yet touched Qin Mu on the dragon, a layer of ripples suddenly appeared. The next moment, a scene that shocked countless people appeared. The Apocalypse Saint who was supposed to capture Qin Mu suddenly stiffened and became motionless. Immediately afterwards, bang! His body exploded. Flesh and blood flew everywhere. Wisps of blood exuding holy power spread across the void, scarlet and pungent. This scene immediately shocked countless people. What's going on? The saints were stunned and widened their eyes, completely unable to believe what they saw. The dignified saint actually exploded and died like this. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 324. On the Dragon Chariot. Qin Mu quietly looked at the saint who had attacked him, but his body did not move at all, his expression was calm, without any ripples. The maids behind him, who looked like fairies, just glanced at the Saint of Apocalypse, and then bowed their heads silently, also not caring. The next moment, with a muffled bang, the body of the Saint of Apocalypse collapsed, like fireworks, and turned into a blood mist all over the sky. The endless holy blood splashed, dyeing the sky red, causing the wind to howl, and dark clouds to cover the sky, as if the sky was also crying for the death of the saint. The death of the saint, the world mourns together. There was no sign of anything, the Saint of Apocalypse did not even have time to scream, and his body turned into fireworks, and not even a piece of intact flesh and blood could be found. The saints of the Apocalypse domain, including the generals guarding the city, all stared at the scene in a daze, unable to say a word for a long time. This scene was too bizarre, beyond their conventional cognition. How bizarre and terrifying it was. A saint was killed in an instant without any warning, and his death was extremely miserable. This shock was enough to destroy their worldview. Even with the help of the imperial power of the imperial soldiers, it would not be possible to achieve this level, right? This is a real saint. He was still ferocious and wanted to capture the Lord of the Great Qin in the previous second, but in a flash, his body exploded and turned into a blood mist. Qin Mu still stood on the dragon chariot in a casual posture, with a calm expression, as if he was an ancient god standing on the top of the world. He didn't even move his fingers just now, but he turned a saint into ashes. Such a method made everyone change color in horror. It was as if there was an invisible sword of heaven and earth hovering around Qin Mu, ready to kill all enemies in the world at any time. How is this possible? This is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The saints of the Apocalypse domain turned pale and their lips trembled. They were completely stunned. For a moment, they simply couldn't believe it. They were saints who were high above and worshipped by the people. They were killed in a second. And he died in front of all of them. Who could withstand this kind of shock? How could he have such a powerful force? No. Something must be wrong. Nangongyun's eyes were blank and his lips trembled. He obviously didn't want to believe it. Shenmoyan's beautiful eyes flickered, and there was a hint of strangeness in his eyes while he was full of fear. For a moment, the saints were filled with a feeling of extreme uneasiness. On the contrary, the generals of the Qin dynasty on the city wall watched the scene with tears in their eyes. Although they had heard of the legends and deeds of His Majesty in the north, they rarely saw His Majesty take action. After all, His Majesty is the ruler of a dynasty, ruling over hundreds of millions of people. He rarely shows up on weekdays, let alone takes action. Therefore, witnessing His Majesty's action today, the shock and excitement are simply indescribable and cannot be expressed in words. Such a powerful saint can't even stop His Majesty's move. What kind of terrifying realm has His Majesty reached? Your Majesty's strength is so terrifying that he can kill the saint in one move. Could it be that His Majesty has entered the realm of the great emperor, otherwise how could he do this? I don't know, I only know that Dakin will be fine this time. In this huge excitement, the Dakin army, which was originally in low morale, suddenly burst into shocking cheers. One by one, they looked excited, looked at Qin Mu on the dragon sedan with fanatical eyes, knelt on the ground, and worshipped. At this time, the national teacher Du Yulin, who was standing aside, trembled with his lips, and a moist luster appeared in his resolute eyes. "Your Majesty, I know you will never give up Dakin." His voice was slightly choked, and was filled with an inexplicable feeling. He knew better than anyone how strong the Apocalypse Saint was, but such an existence was easily wiped out by His Majesty, and no bones were left. "Your Majesty, it seems that you have become stronger. Who are you?" A saint from the Apocalypse domain asked with gritted teeth. From beginning to end, Qin Mu had never made a move. They could not guess the depth of Qin Mu's strength at all, and could only judge by guessing. But this judgment was obviously inaccurate, so that he suspected that the visitor was not the Lord of Dakin at all, but someone else. Qin Mu ignored him, but looked at the blood mist emitting holy power calmly. "No, no, how could you hurt me? You are just a junior, how could you hurt me?" At this time, the soul of the Apocalypse Saint emerged from the blood mist, full of horror and unbelievable roar. Everything just happened too fast. He had no power to resist. He could only protect his soul in a hurry to prevent himself from being completely destroyed. He couldn't imagine how Qin Mu did it. Even if they were both saints, there were differences in strength. As a saint of the 4th level, he was already one of the best. Even if Qin Mu had an emperor's weapon in his hand, it would be impossible to kill his saintly body so easily. Moreover, Qin Mu didn't even take out his weapon just now. He just stood there quietly and killed his indestructible saintly body with a wave of his hand. He was so casual as if he was watching an acrobatic show, and he was the clown in the show. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 325. This is impossible. I am a saint, and my body is indestructible. How could you? The Apocalypse Saint murmured to himself in horror, shaking his head wildly. Even now, he still can't believe that Qin Mu can kill him. His was a holy body. It had been condensed to the extreme and was considered indestructible. It was not made of paper. How could it explode inexplicably? Not to mention, the opponent doesn't even have any use for imperial weapons. He couldn't figure it out, he really couldn't figure it out, how Qin Mu did it. With your cultivation, do you deserve to be called a saint? You're not afraid of being laughed at? The corners of Qin Mu's mouth curved into a sarcastic arc. When the Apocalypse Saint heard this, his face suddenly turned the color of pig liver. He roared angrily, "Arrogant! You stupid king actually destroyed my body, you deserve to die. You have to pay the price, you will be executed by Lingqi, you will not have a good death." The Apocalypse Saint roared crazily, his eyes red. Boom! A breath as vast as the sea suddenly burst out from the soul of the Apocalypse Saint. In an instant, the entire void shook violently, and countless black thunder emerged and swept towards Qin Mu. Each black lightning contains terrifying power, enough to tear apart mountains. Qin Mu's expression remained unchanged. He stretched out his right hand, flicked his fingers, and saw infinite golden light bursting out, as if thousands of golden needles were shooting out, densely packed, covering the sky. With a loud noise, the countless black lightnings shattered and dissipated, and the offensive condensed by the soul of the Apocalypse Saint collapsed in an instant. Qin Mu remained motionless, still standing on the spot, reaching out and grabbing the void in front of him, as if he had caught something. The next moment, there was a violent distortion and trembling in that space, and then, a blurry and hazy shadow was held in the palm of Qin Mu's hand. It was the soul of the Apocalypse Saint. He kept struggling and screaming, trying to break free. "I am a saint, how can you trap me? You can't even think of suppressing my soul is eternal." Qin Mu smiled contemptuously, snorted coldly, and suddenly closed his fingers. Ah! The saint of the apocalypse screamed, and the fire of the soul swayed, dimming a little again. As Qin Mu's 5 fingers continued to tighten, the saint's soul roared sharply and harshly again. The sound was so shrill that it made people's scalp numb. No. Don't. I was wrong, let me go, let. Before the words fell. Bang. With a muffled sound, the phantom suddenly exploded, turned into flying ash and disappeared, annihilated without a trace. Until the moment of his death, he still didn't understand how he could be killed so easily by the other party even though he was a saint. After the divine soul of the apocalypse exploded, it turned into the purest and most majestic vitality, which poured into Qin Mu's body, nourishing the divine tree of enlightenment in his body. And this scene once again stunned everyone. What weird trick did this kid use? The hearts of the saints were beating wildly, and their expressions suddenly changed. Their strength is far superior to that saint, so they naturally know how powerful that saint is. Even if they hold imperial weapons, it is not that easy to kill a saint. After all, the imperial armament is not so easy to control, especially the higher the level of the imperial armament, the more power is required to control it. But now, a mere young boy knocked a lively saint to pieces with a wave of his hand. And he died in such a strange way, without any warning, and without even leaving anyone a chance to react. Is this an illusion? I don't know how many saints had dry throats and struggled to swallow their saliva. Illusion. It must be an illusion. They frantically told themselves that all this must be an illusion and not real. It can be seen that the fall of a saint has greatly shocked their hearts. Many saints were shocked and had a strong sense of crisis in their hearts. Especially those leaders who originally wanted to take advantage of the troubled waters, their hearts twitched hard, and they suddenly felt a trace of regret. Maybe they should not have come here to take a trip into the troubled waters. At this moment, everyone finally understood why Qin Mu dared to come to Chang'an City alone. They just watched helplessly as the soul of the apocalypse saint was crushed by Qin Mu, and turned into boundless vitality and melted into Qin Mu's body. They seemed to have seen their own ending and fate in a daze. Don't panic, everyone. Although this beast is strong, he is only one person. Together we can defeat him and seize the imperial army. A loud voice suddenly sounded, and an old man with white hair and beard suddenly rushed forward and stood in front of everyone. The old man was haggard and exuded an aura of decay, but he could not conceal the suffocating saint power within him. It is the sage ancestor of Xiang Palace in Fengling Domain, Xuanhuan. He is also a powerful saint who has reached the 5th level of Saint Realm. Hearing his voice, the saints from other major forces nodded in agreement, and their faces regained some composure. That's right. Let's join forces and go together to kill this beast. That's right, so what if he is tyrannical? How can one person contend with more than 100 of us saints? Yes, I don't believe it. He is just a young boy, but he really has such incredible fighting power. Kill. We can't let him escape, otherwise we will be in big trouble in the future. Let's go together, get rid of this beast first, and then take the Emperor's weapon. Instantly, everyone recovered from their shock, staring at Qin Mu with fierce eyes, and murderous intent surged. No matter how strong Qin Mu was, he was only one person. There were so many of them, and there were no less than 10 people holding the Emperor's weapon. Can't they deal with a mere Qin Mu? Moreover, now that things have come to this, if they let him escape today, they will definitely have trouble sleeping and eating in the future. Therefore, no matter how evil Qin Mu was, they had to seize this last chance, even if they lost some of their interests. Just you. Too weak. Qin Mu slowly raised his eyes and swept his eyes towards the group of saints. His tone was full of contempt, which made a group of saints furious and shouted, "You are looking for death. Kill." With Xuanhuan's fierce shout, Everyone pinched the magic formula and urged all kinds of magical powers to the extreme. No mercy, go all out. Instantly, all the saints used their magic weapons. For a moment, the sky was full of glittering treasures, illuminating the 9 states, and a terrifying aura swept out. One by one, magic weapons, magical powers, and secret techniques bloomed brilliant as fireworks, cutting through the sky, and smashing towards Qin with terrifying power, as if to completely submerge him in this world. This scene made countless residents of Chang'an City and generals of the Qin dynasty couldn't help but worry, and their breathing stopped. Although His Majesty is extremely powerful, he is only one person. If he is surrounded and killed by the saints together, I'm afraid he will be in danger. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 326. Many ministers and generals couldn't help clenching their fists and looking at Long Chushang's tall and straight back with unblinking eyes, showing deep concern in their eyes. Only Qin Mu always looked calm, neither sad nor happy, neither hiding nor avoiding. Haha, go to hell. Give me your life. Kill. We must not let him leave even half a step. Seeing Qin Mu refusing to dodge, the saints' eyes showed ferocious looks, and they all activated their magical weapons to bombard Qin Mu's body. Boom! The void shook, the heaven and earth collapsed, and the saints' anger was enough to burn mountains and boil seas. In an instant, the void around Qin Mu shattered, and the scene was extremely horrifying. The overwhelming power spread out, destroying everything around it. For a time, the sky collapsed and the earth shattered, and the sun and moon lost their light. Oh! However, facing the overwhelming attack and killing, Qin Mu had a sneer on his lips and a hint of ridicule in his eyes. He was seen calmly sitting on the dragon chair behind him, letting the endless magic weapons and magical powers be shot down. With every blow, countless runes appeared, blocking the magical powers and not being able to harm him at all. How is this possible? The saints' eyes widened, as if they had seen a ghost. They tried their best to attack, but they didn't even touch Qin Mu's clothes. Continue, Gu Xuanji shouted angrily. All the saints took action again. A sacred artifact and magic weapon hovered in the air, blooming with bright holy light and overwhelming pressure. They worked together to activate the magic weapons, and each magic weapon intertwined with thick fairy lights, connecting them together, as if forming a huge cage. And this is just the beginning. As more and more saints join, the light in the cage becomes deeper and deeper, vaguely revealing the light of the avenue, with unlimited power, which is shocking to the world. This level of power is enough to kill any enemy below the 9th level of a saint. These saints are worthy of standing at the pinnacle of the Apocalypse realm's combat power. If they act together, they can resist for a moment even if the Emperor comes in person. The cage fell, locking the universe. Ha ha! Gu Xuanji laughed with excitement, his eyes full of excitement. You foolish king, we will capture and kill you today. The other saints also sneered, as if they had seen the tragic situation of Qin Mu being buried here. The cage lowered and fell towards the dragon chariot. Boom boom boom. The sky exploded, mountains and rivers collapsed, and the earth was torn apart. It was like the end was coming. The endless divine radiance intertwined and collided, like stars exploding, dazzling the entire sky. The entire city of Chang'an shook violently as if it had suffered a huge disaster. Just the fluctuations that spilled out almost destroyed the entire city of Chang'an. At this moment, the 9-headed 5-clawed golden dragon that was pulling Long Chu suddenly raised its head and roared, spitting out hot waves of heat from its mouth. Hold head high. In an instant, endless golden light burst out from the mouth of the 9-headed golden dragon. In an instant, the entire city of Chang'an was enveloped. A transparent golden shield firmly protects Chang'an city inside, like an inverted golden bowl. No matter how the outside divine light is radiated, it is difficult to penetrate. Huh? He actually blocked it? Gu Xuanji and others' pupils shrank, and they looked solemnly at the golden shield that suddenly appeared and firmly guarded Chang'an city. The power of their combined attack just now was enough to destroy a continent, but they couldn't even do anything about the protective shield. This little beast is so evil. What is this? What a terrifying defense capability. Could it be that he is the emperor's soldier in Longchu? It's really extraordinary. Humph, although this thing is terrifying, it can't withstand it for long. You just need to use up the power it contains, and it will naturally dissipate. Don't hold back, everyone, use all your strength to break through the defensive barrier. Quick, kill him now. Everyone was talking a lot, and the greed in their eyes became more intense. They believed that as long as the golden shield disappeared, Qin would fall. And this emperor's weapon will definitely become something in their pocket. Thinking of this, many saints once again exploded with magical powers, frantically bombarding the golden shield. Bang bang bang. The dense sound of collisions echoed between heaven and earth, which was heart-stopping. The incomparably terrifying power raged, causing the mountains around Chang'an city to collapse, and the vegetation turned into ashes and annihilated. Even the void was shattered, revealing a dark state of chaos. With the combined efforts of all the saints, everything within a radius of thousands of miles was completely destroyed and turned into a wasteland. But the golden shield is still hanging in the sky as stable as a mountain, without even a trace showing, as if it can never be shaken. This scene made all the saints stunned and felt unbelievable. What's going on? What the hell is this? It's so durable. A saint cursed with a gloomy face, his eyes full of doubts. It stands to reason that if so many of their saints attack together, they are enough to destroy a continent. At that moment, they almost used all their magical powers and legal powers. Any other peak saint would be enough to kill him, but this shield is still so strong? It's simply unreasonable. Could this be the true power of the imperial army? An old man frowned and whispered, with a look of surprise on his face. After hearing this, everyone was stunned. Soon, someone reacted, his eyes sparkling, and he shouted excitedly, "Yes, it must be like this. If this is true, then the value of this imperial weapon is simply inestimable. Kill Qin and seize the imperial weapon. This imperial weapon must belong to us." For a moment, the eyes of many saints were red, and the greed and desire in their hearts surged, and they cast the spell again. Endless divine light gathered together and condensed into a thick and unmatched thunder snake. Thunder entangled, arcs jumped, exuding a terrifying power, and fell fiercely. Although they did not take out the imperial weapon, they all used their strongest magical powers without reservation. After all, they did not want to take out the imperial weapon unless they had no choice. This is a trump card to save their lives. Boom! The thunder snake penetrated the sky and the earth, and it came out mightily, as if it was going to destroy this world. Ordinary mortals in Chang'an city had already retreated deep into the palace, hiding in various buildings, looking at the changes in the outside world in panic. They couldn't see what happened, they could only vaguely hear the extremely terrible explosion. But even so, they still felt terrified and trembled all over. Once the shield was broken, this prosperous city would fall into an irreparable situation. But fortunately, all this did not happen. The divine light poured on the golden shield, but only made a dull explosion, unable to shake the golden shield. The people in Chang'an city breathed a sigh of relief, and their eyes looked at Qin with more respect. At this time, some cultivators who were a little braver or powerful climbed onto the roof and looked at the battle outside. Their strength allowed them to see clearly what was happening outside. When they saw this scene, they couldn't help swallowing and were shocked. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Bulletin Leng. Chapter 327. Oh my God, so many saints are attacking at the same time, but they can't even break that shield. What kind of shield is that? Why is it so scary? Even a saint can't break it? Could this be His Majesty's trump card? It's too terrifying. Your Majesty is truly a god. Everyone praised Xuanhuan one after another, and their awe for Xuanhuan was even deeper in their hearts. But some people said worriedly, but now we are on the defensive side and are being beaten. We have no ability to counterattack, so it is still very dangerous. As soon as these words came out, many people fell silent. Yes, they are now completely on the weak side and have no power to resist at all, so they can only be beaten passively. And those saints had no intention of stopping, and instead became more and more cruel. They activated their magical powers crazily, and powerful spiritual treasures hit the golden shield one after another, dyeing the entire sky crimson. If this continues, sooner or later he will be tortured to death. At this moment, everyone's hearts were raised again. Their hopes were all pinned on the protective shield, hoping that they could get through it. Xuanhuan, on the other hand, was always sitting on the dragon chair, his eyes indifferent, as if he didn't care. Soon, many divine lights disappeared. Everyone saw that Xuanhuan and the others were all panting from exhaustion and had ferocious expressions. Their faces were full of horror, as if they had seen a ghost and were in disbelief. Each of them tried their best to use their magical powers, but they still couldn't harm the golden shield at all. Could it be that the imperial troops are really going to be dispatched? Thinking of this, Xuanhuan and others looked at each other and saw hesitation in each other's eyes. This is all you can do. At this time, Xuanhuan looked at everyone indifferently, a contemptuous smile appeared on his lips, and his tone was full of sarcasm. Damn it! Don't talk nonsense to him, use the imperial soldiers. Don't hesitate, send out the imperial troops. Hearing these mocking words, the saints who had hesitated at first became angry and immediately gritted their teeth and said, "Since you are looking for death, I will help you." Xuanhuan gritted his teeth and roared as he sacrificed a silver spear. Buzz! The spear shook violently and emitted a bright light, like a shining sun. Then the other saints no longer hesitated, and the imperial soldiers flew out one after another, emitting a bright light. I saw the void split open, and a golden sword stretched across the void, exuding a monstrous killing aura. A giant axe with an exaggerated shape exuding a breathtaking pressure. A green copper bell was spinning, casting down thousands of rays of light, covering all directions, majestic and unparalleled. On the other side, a simple shield glowed with black light, exuding endless heaviness and vicissitudes of life. A long bow, filled with brilliance and astonishing fluctuations. A jade talisman bloomed with brilliant fairy light, illuminating the sky. A stone tablet, thick and majestic, suppresses the world. As soon as these imperial soldiers appeared, they immediately attracted everyone's attention. In an instant, the monks in Chang'an City widened their eyes and took a breath of cold air. Hey! What a guy! They are all imperial soldiers. It's unbelievable that we have seen so many of the rumored imperial soldiers at once. It's terrible. So many imperial soldiers were born at the same time, which is unheard of and unprecedented. Everyone couldn't help but gasp, with shock and astonishment on their faces. They have never seen such a huge scene, it is simply a feast. A group of old monsters who have been practicing for hundreds or even thousands of years have never seen an imperial weapon in their lives, but today they witnessed so many imperial weapons appearing at the same time. And this is only part of it, more imperial weapons have not yet manifested. Imperial soldiers. It is a treasure that transcends the world and can only be possessed by the emperor. Throughout the entire history of the dynasty, there has never been one. They all possess very mysterious and unpredictable power, which is enough to change the direction of a dynasty and even rewrite the pattern of the entire Tianlan territory. Humph. Little beast, let me see how you can block it. Looking at the densely packed imperial soldiers all around him, Xuanhuan couldn't help but smile proudly and burst into laughter. Although they, the saints, all had the common intention not to bring the imperial soldiers with them, the phantoms of the imperial soldiers with only half of their power were enough to suppress the entire audience. What's more, there are so many of them. Ha ha ha, little beast, you are dead today. Once the imperial soldiers come out, you will definitely not be able to escape. Suffer death. Many saints shouted in unison and urged the emperor's soldiers to kill Qin Mu. The pressure of the imperial soldiers swept across, turning the entire sky into chaos, and endless wind and clouds roared. Under the imperial soldiers, Qin Mu's face remained calm, and he didn't even blink his eyelids. He was extremely calm and unhurried. This is the moment I've been waiting for. He stretched out his palm and gently reached forward. Seeing this, Xuanhuan and others couldn't help but be stunned. This guy didn't want to escape and actually face the attack of their imperial soldiers with his bare hands. This was too arrogant and domineering. Humph. Stupid. Ha ha ha, he is dead. He actually dares to resist the attack of the imperial soldiers with his body. I really don't know how to write the word death. Don't overestimate your capabilities. Seek death. Today we will do justice for heaven and destroy you, this foolish king. Xuanhuan and other saints shook their heads and sneered, a look of contempt flashing in their eyes. The phantom of the emperor's soldier was so terrifying that even a trace of it was enough to destroy any existence of the powerful level. Qin Mu dared to take it with his bare hands, which was really a way to his own death. Boom! The sky and earth roared. The power of the emperor's soldier surged, and it was overwhelming, like the collapse of the sky, vast and boundless. Even ordinary saints at the peak of their power would be instantly annihilated when they encountered this pressure, and even quasi-emperors would have to temporarily avoid the edge. You ants, are you worthy of acting on behalf of heaven? Qin Mu laughed sarcastically, stretched out his right palm and slapped it lightly towards the sky. Bang! There was a muffled explosion, and the void collapsed instantly, finally unable to bear this terrifying power. The next moment, the sky and the earth suddenly darkened, the sun, the moon and the stars lost their color, and only the infinite emperor's power rushed into the sky, covering the sky. Then, a black palm print rose up with a bang, instantly covering the entire sky, and pressing down on the many emperor's soldier. That palm print was too terrifying, as if it could smash the stars, turn the world upside down, and destroy everything. The moment the phantoms of the emperor's weapons of Xuanhuan and others touched Qin Mu's palm print, they exploded directly, and exploded into countless fragments and scattered all over the world. No. How is this possible? Seeing this scene, Xuanhuan and others' pupils shrank sharply, their faces changed wildly, and their eyeballs almost popped out of fear. Those phantoms of the emperor's weapons all have real imperial power. How could they be smashed so easily? No, that's not right. My phantom of the emperor's weapon has lost its source of power. At this time, an old man suddenly widened his eyes and roared in astonishment. Then, other saints who controlled the emperor's weapons also showed horror on their faces. Mine too. It's broken, there's something wrong with the emperor's weapon itself. Damn it! It must be this little beast that took away our emperor's weapon body. The saints roared angrily, hating to be crazy. Before they could continue to roar, the next second, the black palm print continued to fall down, carrying endless might and power, submerging Xuanhuan and others. Boom! A huge roar resounded throughout Chang'an City. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 328. Crack. A crisp sound rang out, like the sound of porcelain breaking. Dark and deep space cracks emerged and spread. In the horrified sight of countless people, the world was torn apart, the mountains and rivers were broken, and the void collapsed. The endless shadows of the Imperial soldiers shattered, turning into countless rays of light rain that fell in all directions, covering the sky and the sun, swallowing everything. The world shook. Circles of ripples spread out, overturning endless turbulence in the void, which frightened almost all the powerful creatures in the Tianlan domain. This is... What's wrong? Is there a battle between saints? Look, the void is shaking. What happened? Someone panicked, with fear and confusion on his face. Run, an old monk exclaimed, with disbelief in his eyes. Even those creatures around the Tianlan domain who did not belong to the human race could clearly feel this fluctuation, and their hearts were throbbing. This is the power of the Emperor. Is someone using the Emperor's weapons to fight? One after another, peerless masters woke up from their slumber. Their eyes shot out terrible cold light, piercing through endless time and space, and looking at the distant and unclear battle scene. Ordinary cultivators could only feel the huge and terrifying pressure, and they didn't know what it was. And those with high cultivation could vaguely feel the breath of the legendary emperors from the terrifying aftermath, and their souls trembled and were uneasy. There is the light of the immortal way in front, and the power of the emperor behind. The human race is really getting more and more lively. An extremely long-lived existence muttered to himself, and his turbid eyes bloomed with blazing brilliance. But then he sighed with regret, it's a pity that it's not time yet, otherwise I really want to join in the fun. But you can let the younger generation of the clan check it out to avoid any uncontrollable factors. After the unknown ancient existence muttered to himself, he conveyed a divine thought to the outside world and fell into silence again. At this time, he was obviously not the only one who had this idea. One after another, peerless figures who had lived for a long time passed their orders to the younger generations of the clan. For a moment, the dark waves surged, the wind and clouds surged, and countless alien creatures walked out of their ancestral lands, looking at the direction of the Tianlan region of the human race, ready to move. At this time, above Chang'an City, in the void that was dozens of miles high, a dark palm print was slowly falling down at a constant speed. The speed was not fast, and it could even be described as very slow, but the strange thing was that the saints under the palm seemed to be cast in a fixed spell, standing still, allowing the dark palm to slap on their heads. It was as if they were watching their own death coming. The huge and boundless imperial power swept all around, making all the saints feel as heavy as carrying a mountain. The next moment, everyone saw the sky explode, and groups of dazzling light burst out, illuminating the entire Chang'an city red. An unparalleled wave spread out, sweeping across the sky, shaking the 4 seas and 9 states. Boom! A palm fell, and all the saints standing on the top of the world screamed, blood and flesh splattered, flying out like a kite with a broken string, bleeding. This force was too strong, and they had no power to resist. One by one, they vomited blood and retreated, trembling all over. Unbelievable. Ah! No! Hide! The shrill screams were accompanied by endless blood rain. The saints with weaker power exploded into a ball of meat on the spot. Some saints had their bodies shaken, their skin cracked, and golden blood overflowed. The saints with little lifespan were killed by a palm, and died directly, with a tragic death. Puff! 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 Blood flowers bloomed one after another, and behind each blood flower, a saint fell. Almost every other breath, several powerful saints fell. All this happened in the blink of an eye. In just a short moment, more than a dozen saints fell, and blood was spilling in the air. What a terrible scene! The sky and the earth seemed to be dyed red, with corpses everywhere, blood flowing like a river, and broken limbs and arms scattered, like a purgatory on earth. Countless people in Chang'an City were stunned, their eyes widened, and they couldn't believe what they saw. Your Majesty can kill so many saints in an instant, am I seeing it wrong? It's only been a short time, and your Majesty's strength has become so terrible. How did your Majesty do it? It's incredible, your Majesty is so strong that it defies the sky. This is a miracle. Everyone's heart was pounding, dizzy, and excited. Whether in the palace, on the city walls, or among the people, there were gasps. Is this true? Even the national teacher Du Yulin was dumbfounded, as if in a dream. In their cognition, the saints were already terrifying enough to be kings and ancestors. But at this time, they were like a group of lambs to be slaughtered, being killed without any resistance, and were completely vulnerable. Still crushed with a crushing attitude. And the most important point. These are not ordinary saints, but a group of saints holding imperial weapons. But they still couldn't stop the palm of His Majesty. How strong has he reached? Could it be the legendary emperor level? Thinking of this, Du Yulin couldn't help but shudder. He has been following Qin Mu since he ascended the throne, and he knows him best. But even Du Yulin had to admit that he couldn't see how powerful Qin Mu was at this time. How could this be? Looking at the fallen saints, Du Yulin even began to doubt whether the Majesty in front of him was still the Majesty he knew. Your Majesty, he murmured in a low voice, with mixed feelings. After a long time, when the smoke and dust settled, everyone looked up and felt their scalps tingling. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future Empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 329. On top of their heads, every saint who was lucky enough to survive was covered in blood, with a weak breath, disheveled hair, and in a very miserable state. Especially the leader Gu Xuanji, whose clothes were torn and bloody, his chest was sunken, and countless bones were broken, looking miserable. Damn it! How could this happen? Gu Xuanji was terrified, his face was pale, and his whole body was cold, as if he had fallen into an ice cave that had existed for thousands of years. His mouth twitched, his pupils contracted, and he couldn't believe that he would be defeated so thoroughly. Although he had long expected that his opponent must be very strong, after all, the opponent was able to kill dozens of saints, which was enough to prove his terrifying degree. But he never thought that the gap between him and the opponent would be so big, which was completely beyond his expectations. This was not a contest of the same level at all. They had previously speculated that Qin Mu's imperial power should have been assisted by some kind of imperial weapon, but now it seems that this is not the case at all. Qin Mu's palm finally made Gu Xuanji understand that this was not due to the use of external objects or treasures. He is a freak who truly possesses such terrifying combat power. He killed more than a dozen saints with one move, which is more genuine than the real emperor. How did this monster cultivate? How could he be so strong? He couldn't figure it out, he really couldn't figure it out. They practiced hard for thousands of years, consuming endless resources and energy, and barely broke through to the saint realm. And Qin Mu, with a bone age of only about 20 years, could slaughter more than 10 saints by himself. How did he cultivate this? He could feel that Qin Mu had an unimaginable huge power hidden in his body, as deep and vast as the abyss and the sea. The crisscrossing chains of laws wrapped around his body, as dazzling as stars. Gu Xuanji's mind collapsed and he was almost crazy. Run. Suddenly, such a thought flashed through Gu Xuanji's mind. Although he was arrogant, he was not stupid. At this time, he had determined that he was no match at all. There was only one way to die if he stayed. Gu Xuanji is worthy of being a saintly ancestor with a long lifespan. The moment he realized that the situation was not good, he decisively turned around and left, turning into a flash of light to escape. At the moment he was about to escape. Want to run? Have you asked me? Qin Mu's voice slowly sounded in his ears. Before he finished speaking, a pale jade-like palm suddenly stretched out and slapped him lightly. It seemed extremely slow, but it was extremely weird, and the speed was incredible. Before this palm approached, Gu Xuanji felt a huge pressure coming. His heart suddenly stopped, and the light under his feet suddenly stagnated, and he could no longer move half a step. He turned his head with difficulty, and saw that the pale, clean, and transparent palm had appeared in his eyes, only an inch away from him. Boom! The void exploded. Under his horrified gaze, the palm suddenly clenched. Then he squeezed it hard. No! A desperate roar resounded through the world. Bang! There was only a muffled sound, followed by a dull crash, like an eggshell breaking. Puff! In the horrified eyes of everyone, the supreme saint who was said to have been rampant in the world and had been in power for 8,000 years, was torn into pieces like a watermelon under this palm, and blood splattered. One finger crushed it? Gudong! Looking at this scene, everyone's throat moved, swallowed saliva involuntarily, and felt their scalp tingling. Puff! Nangongyun's was covered in blood, with blood hanging from the corners of his mouth. He staggered back a few steps, his face pale. He stared at the scene with a dull look, and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. The other saints also looked like they were about to cry. And Shen Moyan was pale as she controlled the formation she arranged outside Chang'an City. She didn't suffer too much damage on her body. I don't know if it was because Qin Mu took special care of her or because of the protection of the formation. Anyway, she never expected that this formation was originally used to deal with the Qin soldiers in Chang'an City, but in the end it became a formation to protect her. It's really ridiculous. The palm just now was so terrible that they couldn't resist it at all. If they didn't have extremely high realms and strength, they would have died under this blow, following the footsteps of the previous saint. Impossible. How can you be so powerful? The many saints who were lucky enough to survive widened their eyes, full of shock and disbelief, and couldn't believe this fact at all. Could he really be the emperor? Even though they were in a life and death crisis now, this idea still emerged in the minds of the saints. Because this conclusion was so shocking that they suspected they were dreaming. Who are you? A saint roared, filled with strong resentment and hatred. The Lord of Qin, Qin Mu smiled. He stood on the sky, his sleeves fluttering, his black hair dancing wildly, like a demon king who dominated life and death, looking down on all living things. He looked down at this group of ants struggling to survive, his indifferent eyes revealed undisguised contempt and disdain. To him, these saints were no different from chickens and dogs. No, you are definitely not that tyrant. He can't be so powerful. A saint roared, furious. Qin Mu shook his head slightly and said, you are not only weak, but also stupid. He stretched out his hand and flicked it. Suddenly, a golden light burst out and penetrated the void. The next moment, accompanied by a shrill howl, another saint's body suddenly exploded and completely disappeared from the world. I will fight you. The saint shouted madly, burning his spirit. Boom! The world shook, and the vast power burst out. In an instant, the vitality of heaven and earth boiled violently, like boiling water. Then a bright light burst out from his eyebrows, turning into a brilliant sun, blooming with billions of rays of light. A magnificent sacred breath spread out, with a majestic momentum, suppressing the heavens. It seemed that some kind of god had revived and descended to the mortal world, with unpredictable majesty. Qin Mu raised his eyebrows and looked at the saint with interest. The next moment, the saint was emitting golden light all over his body, like a god, holding a huge sword and slashing at him. This huge sword is a quasi-emperor weapon, which contains terrifying power. As soon as it was sacrificed, it caused the heaven and earth to resonate, and thunders slashed out, and the destructive aura was filled. Although the saint was already exhausted, the power of this quasi-emperor weapon was still enough to shock people. Divine sword Ju! He shouted, holding the huge sword and slashing down. The void trembled. A brilliant golden sword energy tore through the sky and slashed towards Qin Mu fiercely. Wherever the sword pointed, the sky and the earth dimmed. However, facing this earth-shaking attack, Qin Mu did not dodge or avoid. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 330. You can show off your ugliness even though you are a trivial person. Qin Mu said indifferently, raising his right hand and grabbing the giant sword. Clang! There was a crisp sound. The brilliant giant sword was actually caught by Qin Mu with his bare hands. How is that possible? The saint's eyes flashed with disbelief. You. He wanted to say something else, but suddenly his pupils shrank. Bang! Qin Mu threw him away with his backhand and smashed him directly into a mountain peak. In an instant, the mountain collapsed and smoke billowed. You actually killed Gugu, you deserve to die. At this time, a saint from the wind spirit realm roared angrily, and a green light bloomed all over his body, turning into a sword light, splitting the void, and slashed towards Qin Mu at the top of the dragon. Boom! A loud noise was heard, and Qin Mu at the top of the dragon push was motionless, surrounded by bright golden light. The sharp sword light instantly collapsed and turned into a rain of light. No. The saint suffered severe injuries, vomiting blood, and his body fell to the ground like a kite with broken strings. All this was done by lightning. When the saint fell to the ground, Qin Mu turned around and looked down at everyone. Who else wants to die too? He said calmly, his tone extremely cold. Qin Mu stood with his hands behind his back, and the aura coming from his body was shuddering. The saints were as silent as cicadas. Qin Mu scanned the audience and said calmly, I will give you a chance to live. Hand over all your wealth and treasures and surrender to me. Otherwise, you will die. As soon as these words came out, the remaining saints were all extremely angry. They have never experienced such humiliation. This is a dignified saint. Each saint represents an inheritance, a prosperous clan, and great power. However, now they have lost the right to choose and are still reduced to slaves. This is simply a disgrace. Ha 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 ha. A saint raised his head and laughed, with a sad voice, and said, we have been practicing for thousands of years and have gone through many hardships to reach this point today. How can we be willing to surrender to a tyrant like you? Qin Mu was speechless after hearing this. He stared at the saint with deep eyes, and coldly snorted, in that case, then go and die. After finishing speaking, he slowly raised his right hand and pointed his index finger at the saint. In an instant, heaven and earth were silent, and everything was silent. The saint's voice stopped suddenly, and the golden brilliance surging on his body suddenly went out. Immediately afterwards, his body began to age rapidly, turning into a mummy in the blink of an eye. His eyes were wide open, showing infinite regret, but the vitality had long been cut off and he was frozen here forever. This scene made everyone present feel horrified and could not help but shudder. Everyone come together. Maybe there is a glimmer of hope. A saint gnashed his teeth and roared angrily, but as soon as he finished speaking, a blazing fireball flew over. The fireball contained the monstrous rules of flames, which burned the entire world. Ah! In an instant, the saint let out a shrill wail, and his entire body burned and turned into ashes. Even his soul could not escape and was refined alive. But Qin Mu didn't stop his movements. He stretched out his right index finger again and randomly pointed at another saint. The saint's face changed wildly, feeling boundless fear, and he immediately turned around and ran away, trying to escape. However, in an instant, the entire sky seemed to collapse. A huge law chain fell from the sky and bound towards the saint, instantly binding him and making him unable to move. Bang! There was a dull crash. The saint's body stiffened suddenly, and then quickly slumped down like a deflated rubber ball. His body was cracked and turned into ashes. His soul struggled twice before being strangled to pieces by the chains of law and completely wiped out from the world. Another saint has fallen. In just a few breaths, the 5 saints died. Qin Mu crushed the 5 saints to death with 5 different methods, just like crushing 5 ants to death. He stood in mid-air with his hands behind his back, his expression calm and proud. There was an eerie silence all around. Many saints looked at each other and saw deep fear in each other's eyes. Everyone was frightened to death by the powerful methods Qin Mu showed. Killing a saint is really like killing a chicken. This is not a human being, it is clearly a devil. Qin Mu looked at everyone and said calmly, "Last chance, surrender or die." Many saints looked at each other with extremely complicated emotions. They thought that as long as they united together, they would definitely win. But who would have thought that Qin Mu could be so defiant and invincible? This is not a level battle at all. Qin Mu is too strong. Many saints showed bitterness, regret and despair. If they had known that this man was so terrifying, they would never have come to the great Qin. But according to the information they had received before, Qin Mu's strength was entirely due to the power of the formation, not his own strength. But now it seems that this information is simply wrong. After a long time, His Majesty the Qin Emperor. Finally, a saint plucked up the courage and saluted Qin Mu. He said respectfully, "It is indeed our fault this time. Please forgive us for our previous offense. I hope your Majesty will be magnanimous. From now on, we are willing to obey your Majesty's lead." Seeing him take the lead, the other saints followed suit. "That's right, we surrender, please raise your hands and let us live, we will definitely obey your orders in the future." A saint lowered his head and begged. His face was full of pain, his body was hunched, and he looked humble and cowardly. Soon, the other saints bowed their heads and expressed their willingness to be Qin Mu's followers. Although they were unruly and had high aspirations, they had to bow their heads at this time. The strength shown by Qin Mu was too strong, and there was no room for resistance. However, there were also several saints whose eyes kept flickering, but they did not express their opinions. For example, Nangongyuan's, Shenmoyan, Nangang Lingtian, Mo Xianchen, the 3 swordsmen of the Fuping sword sect, the sword fairy Mo Rushuan and other saints in the Tiankai domain. Qin Mu glanced at them, with a sarcastic smile on his face, and said, "Don't get it wrong. When I say surrender, I don't mean that you should be my followers, but that you should be the watchdogs of the Qin dynasty." Hearing this, all the saints present were stunned and looked at Qin Mu in disbelief. You want us to be the watchdogs?" Nangongyuan asked in shock, unable to utter the last word. Qin Mu sneered and said, "Otherwise, do I still need you, a bunch of rubbish, to help me?" His words made all the saints present furious. This was naked contempt, trampling, and insult to their dignity. Nangongyun's face turned pale, and he shouted in a deep voice, "We are saints. You let us be watchdogs. What do you think we are? Ants?" Qin Mu glanced at him and said lightly, "You are just saints. I will kill you like slaughtering pigs and dogs." Nangongyun's was so angry that his lungs exploded. His whole body was trembling, and his eyes were wide open. However, Qin Mu's next sentence made him so angry that he almost spit blood. I saw Qin Mu looking at Shen Moyan, smiling and teasing. "I heard that this is your Taoist partner. She looks pretty good. She doesn't have to be a watchdog. She can enter my harem and be a